This is the tube bias section that allows you to monitor the performance of each tube that is basically determining the tone of the amp. As you know, anybody that's used the tube amps, tubes are very fragile. Tubes can go bad at any time. Tube amp can sound great one day, it can sound poor the next, it can sound great in one room, poor in another room. The reason that is because tubes rely on a certain amount of current to obviously maintain a certain bias level. So if the electricity in one room is low, then the tubes are going to have lower voltage going through them. Consequently, if the room has got high voltage, the tubes are going to have higher voltage running through them. So that determines a lot of your tone. That's why tube amps sound different all the time. What this allows you to do is basically, if you've got a little digital multimeter, this is actually a nice one, but you can get these at Radio Shack or any small electronics shops. And it's just a digital voltmeter that needs to read millivolts DC. So I'm going to set that here. That is actually this control function on this. And you can actually see that each tube has its own little section, own little monitoring section here. If a tube, let's say a tube does go bad, first thing that's going to happen is the tube failure light's going to come on so you know which tube went bad. Very cool, because half the time you don't know. Sometimes the tube may still be lit. Secondly, you're going to have a fuse that's probably going to be taken out as well. If the tube does blow, the fuse is going to blow because it's going to protect your internal circuits. You don't want this bad tube catastrophically blowing and taking a circuit board out with it. So that's what the tube is for. Then you have a bias adjustment. I'm going to show you in just a minute. This will allow you to turn the bias up or down to make sure your amp has always got the appropriate current running through each tube. The common is a ground, and then each tube has a hot test point. You can see from tube 1, tube 2, 3, and 4. So let's just show you how to bias this real quick. And we have artists and customers that do this every day. Different rooms they go to. It's basically like monitoring the performance of your engine in your car. It's no different. So I'm going to take the common ground, which is the ground or earth as known in other countries, and I'm going to go into the test point of tube 1. As you can see, that tube right now is set at about 40 millivolts DC. We typically set the tubes leaving the factory between 38 and 40. This is very good. This is rated for this type of tube that we're using right now. So this is actually very well biased tube right now. You can set it higher or lower. A lower would give you more of a browned out, kind of softer tone. A higher setting would give you more of a harder type of, you know, a little bit more attack tone, a little more high end. We typically, I wouldn't sweep from a range of 28 to 48. Keep it in that range, but you can absolutely affect your tone by where your bias is set in the back. So if you want to play around with it, it's fine. Now a higher setting will shorten your tube life. Keep that in mind because you're going to burn the tubes a little hotter. So 40 is a perfect setting for pretty much any type of tone. So then all I would do to check the rest of the tubes is leave the common in there that stays. Go to tube 2. Wow, 39.5, very close. As long as they're within a couple millivolts of each other, they're perfect. Then I would go to tube 3, 39.8. Whoever biased this did a pretty good job. Go to tube 4, 39.7. So all of them are reading pretty much a perfect bias at this point as far as what we recommend. Now, let's say I want to adjust it. So I come over here to tube 1 and I just stuck in a new tube, or I want to check it. And this is reading, let's say this is reading 50 and I want to adjust it. Each tube has a bias adjustment, little screwdriver slot. I take a little flathead screwdriver, and once I find the slot here, I just basically adjust it up or down. As you can see, I'm turning it down now, and I'm down to 25 millivolts. So I'm going to bring it back up, and that's all you do to basically check the bias of your amp. Very cool feature.